Shocking dark. Truth about SoME women. Men must know. Carl Jung. What if I told you that one of history's greatest psychologists discovered something so profound about human nature that it could completely change how you understand yourself and others? Something that most people never learn, but once you do, you'll see relationships, behavior, and even your own mind in a completely different light. Today, we're diving deep into Carl Jung's most transformative insights about the human psyche. I'm talking about concepts that will make you question everything you thought you knew about personality, relationships, and what drives people to act the way they do. By the end of this video, you'll understand the hidden forces that shape every interaction you have, why people wear masks without even knowing it, and how to recognize the patterns that most people miss completely. If you're ready to unlock these psychological secrets, smash that subscribe button, and let's begin this journey into the depths of human nature. Chapter 1. Who was Carl Jung? Before we dive into the psychology that will blow your mind, let's talk about the man behind these discoveries. Carl Gustav Jung wasn't just any psychologist. This was a man who dared to explore the darkest corners of the human mind at a time when psychology was just emerging as a science. Born in Switzerland in 1875, Jung started as a student of Sigmund Freud. But here's where it gets interesting. Jung didn't just follow his mentor blindly. He challenged Freud's ideas and developed theories that were so revolutionary, they caused a permanent split between the two giants of psychology. While Freud focused on sexual drives, Jung discovered something far more complex and fascinating about what really motivates human behavior. Jung introduced concepts that sound almost mystical: the collective unconscious, archetypes, psychological types, and the shadow self. These weren't just academic theories. They were practical tools for understanding why people do what they do. Here's what's crazy: Jung's ideas were so ahead of their time that many psychologists initially rejected them. Today, concepts like introversion and extroversion, which Jung pioneered, are part of everyday language. But Jung discovered something else, something that explains patterns in relationships and human behavior that most people never recognize. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. Comment below if you've ever felt like you understood someone's behavior on a deeper level. Jung's work might explain why. Chapter 2. The Shadow Self, the hidden side of everyone. Now we get to Jung's most powerful and unsettling discovery, the shadow. Every single person you know, including yourself, has a shadow. This isn't some mystical concept. It's a psychological reality that affects every relationship you'll ever have. The shadow is the part of your personality that you don't want to acknowledge. It contains all the traits, desires, and impulses that you've learned are unacceptable, so you push them into the unconscious mind. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who constantly talks about how honest they are? Jung would say they're probably struggling with their own dishonesty in their shadow. Or someone who's always criticizing others for being fake. They're likely battling their own authenticity issues. Here's the shocking part: the things that irritate you most about other people are often reflections of your own shadow. Jung called this projection. When you can't stand someone's arrogance, you might be projecting your own suppressed arrogant tendencies. This explains so much about relationships. Ever wonder why some people seem to attract the same type of toxic partner over and over? They're unconsciously drawn to people who express their shadow qualities. I want you to think about the last person who really got under your skin. What specific behavior bothered you? Hold that thought. We're going to come back to this. But here's where it gets really interesting. Jung discovered that people who completely deny their shadow become dangerous to themselves and others. They become what he called unconsciously destructive. This shadow concept doesn't just apply to individuals. Jung found patterns in how it shows up differently in various personality types, which brings us to our next revelation. Chapter 3. The persona, the masks we all wear. While the shadow is what we hide, the persona is what we show to the world. And Jung's insights about personas will completely change how you see social interactions. Jung borrowed the word persona from ancient Greek theater, where actors wore masks. He realized that we all wear psychological masks depending on our social situations. Think about your different personas. You probably act differently at work than you do with your family. You might have a different personality on social media versus in person. Each of these is a persona. Here's what most people don't realize. Personas aren't fake or bad. They're actually necessary for functioning in society. The problem comes when people become so identified with their personas that they lose touch with their authentic selves. This is huge for understanding relationships. When you first meet someone, you're interacting with their persona, not their true self. Early relationships are essentially a dance between personas. Jung warned about people who are over-identified with their persona. These are individuals who have become their role so completely that they don't know who they are without it. Think of the executive who can't turn off work mode, or the people pleaser who doesn't know their own opinions. You can spot over-identification with persona in several ways. People who can't be alone with themselves. Those who constantly need external validation. Individuals who have extreme reactions when their role is challenged. People who seem perfect but something feels off. Understanding personas helps you navigate relationships more skillfully. Instead of taking someone's persona at face value, you can look for glimpses of their authentic self underneath. Have you ever felt exhausted from maintaining a certain image? That's your authentic self struggling against an over-rigid persona. Let me know in the comments if this resonates with you. But Jung discovered something even more fascinating about how personas and shadows interact differently in various personality types. Chapter 4. Psychological types, the hidden patterns. This is where Jung's work gets really practical. He identified fundamental differences in how people process the world, differences that explain so much about relationship conflicts and misunderstandings. Most people know about introversion and extroversion because Jung invented these terms, but his original theory was much more sophisticated than the simplified versions you see today. Jung didn't see introversion and extroversion as social preferences. He saw them as fundamental orientations of psychic energy. Introverts direct energy inward toward their inner world of thoughts and feelings. Extroverts direct energy outward toward the external world of people and activities. But that's just the beginning. Jung identified 4 cognitive functions that combine with introversion-extroversion. 1. Thinking, logic and analysis. 2. Feeling, values and emotions. 3. Sensation, facts and details. Intuition, possibilities and patterns. Here's where it gets fascinating for relationships. Jung discovered that people are typically attracted to others who have their opposite functions developed. This creates both attraction and conflict. A thinking dominant person might be drawn to someone who's feeling dominant because they admire their emotional intelligence. But they'll also clash because they make decisions so differently. An intuitive person might be fascinated by a sensing person's attention to detail, but frustrated by their focus on practical matters instead of possibilities. This leads to Jung's most controversial insight about relationships. He proposed that everyone has a contrasexual side of their personality. Men have an inner feminine side, Anima, and women have an inner masculine side, Animus. When people fall in love, they're often projecting their anima or animus onto their partner. They're attracted to qualities that represent their own undeveloped side. Jung said that healthy relationships require both people to gradually withdraw these projections and develop their own contrasexual qualities. The person who initially seemed perfect because they embodied your anima animus becomes a real, flawed human being. You can recognize anima animus projection when someone seems too good to be true. You feel like you complete each other. You can't imagine living without them early in the relationship. You expect them to fulfill emotional needs you haven't learned to meet yourself. Think about your most intense romantic attractions. Were you drawn to qualities that were very different from your own personality? Jung would say that's your psyche seeking wholeness. But Jung's insights go even deeper. When we look at how these psychological patterns play out in the process, he called individuation. Chapter 5, Individuation, the Journey to Wholeness. This is Jung's ultimate insight about human development, and it's probably the most important concept you'll learn today. Individuation is Jung's term for the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. Not who your parents wanted you to be, not who society expects, but your authentic self. Here's the paradox that Jung discovered. To become an individual, you first have to understand how you're connected to universal patterns. You have to recognize the archetypes and collective influences that shape you before you can transcend them. Jung saw individuation as typically beginning in midlife, around 35-40. Before that, people are usually focused on establishing their place in the external world. Career, relationships, social status. What we call a midlife crisis, Jung saw as the beginning of individuation. The persona that worked for the first half of life starts feeling empty and meaningless. People begin asking, is this all there is? True individuation involves several key steps. 1. Recognizing your persona, understanding the masks you wear. 2. Confronting your shadow, accepting the parts of yourself you've denied. 3. Integrating your anima animus, developing your contrasexual qualities. 4. Connecting with your authentic self, finding your unique path. This process dramatically affects relationships. Partners who individuate together can achieve unprecedented intimacy. But if only one person individuates, relationships often end. Jung warned that individuation is the most difficult psychological work a person can do. Society, family, and even your own ego will resist it. Most people prefer the comfort of their familiar patterns. You might be beginning individuation if you question values you previously accepted without thinking. Feel drawn to understand your dreams and unconscious patterns. Experience a pull toward authenticity over approval. Begin to see your life as a unique story rather than following a template. Feel simultaneously more connected to others and more independent. Here's what Jung emphasized. You cannot individuate without doing shadow work. You must face and integrate the parts of yourself you've rejected. This is often triggered by recognizing these qualities in others who trigger strong reactions in you. Remember that person who irritated you earlier? Jung would suggest that instead of judging them, ask yourself, how might I have this same quality? This is advanced psychological work, but it's transformative. Have you ever felt like you were living someone else's life? Or felt a deep pull toward something more authentic? That might be your individuation process beginning. Share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's apply all of these insights to understand some specific patterns that Jung observed. Chapter 6. Practical Applications, Recognizing the Patterns. Now that you understand Jung's framework, let's apply it to real-world situations. These patterns will help you understand behavior that previously seemed confusing or frustrating. When someone consistently attracts dramatic people, they might be projecting their own suppressed emotional intensity. When someone always finds selfish partners, they might be avoiding their own healthy selfishness. People who present as extremely helpful and selfless often have suppressed anger and resentment in their shadow. When they finally express these feelings, others are shocked because it contradicts their persona. In relationships, initial attraction often fades when you realize your partner can't fulfill all your emotional needs. Jung would say this is healthy. It forces you to develop those qualities in yourself. When someone starts changing and growing, their family and friends often try to pull them back to their old patterns. Jung saw this as the collective unconscious resisting individual development. Extreme behaviors often compensate for their opposite in the shadow. Someone who's obsessively neat might have chaos in their shadow. Someone who's always positive might be avoiding their legitimate anger or sadness. Using Jung's insights, here are some relationship red flags. Someone who seems to have no flaws or negative emotions. People who are extremely critical of others for traits they claim not to have. Individuals who can't be alone or constantly need external validation. Partners who expect you to fulfill all their emotional needs. People who have never questioned their beliefs or values. Conversely, here are signs of psychological health. Someone who can acknowledge their flaws without being self-deprecating. People who take responsibility for their projections. Individuals who can be genuinely happy alone. Partners who encourage your growth even when it's uncomfortable. People engaged in some form of self-reflection or personal development. Jung's ultimate message is that wholeness comes from integration, not perfection. The goal isn't to eliminate your shadow or personas, but to become conscious of them so they don't control you unconsciously. Understanding these patterns transforms how you approach relationships. Instead of looking for someone to complete you, you seek someone to grow with. Instead of trying to change others, you focus on your own projections. Try these Jung-inspired practices. 1. Notice who triggers strong reactions in you and ask what they might be reflecting. 2. Identify your different personas and when you use them. 3. Pay attention to your dreams. Jung saw them as messages from the unconscious. 4. Practice authentic expression in small ways. 5. Question beliefs you've never examined. I challenge you to spend 1 week noticing your own projections. When someone annoys you, ask yourself how you might have that same quality. It's uncomfortable but incredibly revealing. As we wrap up, let's talk about how to use these insights responsibly and ethically. Chapter 7, The Bigger Picture. Jung's Ultimate Message. Host. After spending decades studying the human psyche, what was Jung's ultimate message? It's both simpler and more profound than you might expect. Jung believed that the purpose of human life is to become conscious, not just intellectually aware, but psychologically conscious of the forces that drive you, the patterns that repeat in your life, and the authentic self beneath all your conditioning. Jung wasn't just interested in individual psychology. He believed that as more people become conscious of their own patterns, humanity as a whole evolves. Your individual work on yourself contributes to collective consciousness. This is why Jung's work is ultimately about responsibility. When you understand your shadow, you stop unconsciously hurting others. When you recognize your projections, you stop trying to control people. When you develop your authentic self, you contribute something unique to the world. Imagine if everyone understood these concepts. Relationships would be based on conscious choice rather than unconscious projection. People would take responsibility for their own emotional needs while genuinely supporting others. But Jung also warned about the dangers of psychological knowledge. It can become another form of ego inflation, using concepts to feel superior to others or to avoid genuine emotional work. The healthiest approach to Jung's insights is humility. Recognize that this is lifelong work. Everyone has shadows, personas, and projections. The goal is awareness, not perfection. Use these insights to understand, not to judge. When you recognize someone's shadow projection, respond with compassion, knowing you have your own blind spots. When you see someone's persona, appreciate the vulnerability underneath. Jung's final paradox: the more you become your authentic individual self, the more you can genuinely connect with others. Authenticity creates intimacy in a way that personas never can. This isn't a destination, but a lifelong journey. Every relationship, every conflict, every strong emotional reaction is an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply. What resonated most with you in this exploration of Jung's psychology? Which concepts do you want to explore further in your own life? Conclusion and call to action. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the shadow self to individuation, from personas to psychological types. But knowledge without application is just entertainment. Remember, everyone has a shadow, and your strong reactions to others often reveal your own projections. Everyone wears personas, and true intimacy requires authentic expression beneath these masks. Everyone is on a journey toward wholeness, whether they're conscious of it or not. Jung's work isn't just about understanding psychology. It's about living more consciously. It's about taking responsibility for your patterns, healing your projections, and contributing your authentic gifts to the world. If this video opened your eyes to something new about yourself or relationships, I want to hear about it. Share your biggest insight in the comments below. Which Jung concept hit home for you? And if you found value in this deep dive into human psychology, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We explore psychology, philosophy, and personal development concepts that can genuinely transform how you understand yourself and others. This channel is for people who are serious about consciousness and growth. We don't do surface-level content here. We go deep into the ideas that actually change lives. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The insights we've explored today are tools for that lifelong journey. Check out the suggested videos on screen for more deep dives into psychology and personal development. Until next time, stay conscious, stay curious, and keep growing.